I'm Alex Howard.
And I'm Amanda Silver, and this is Dirty Laundry.
Okay, so you break it, you buy it.
Yes, I feel like that is
This is our new plan for women around the world.
Well, you know what? I think that we know that women's bodies take such a toll when they are having children and going through those childbearing years.
Yeah.
And then they're out of that stage. And then
what?
If they get divorced, then they're back on the market. And it's like all of a sudden, they have to sort of rebrand themselves. And sometimes that comes with a little bit of a glow up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you see these sort of mommy glow ups that you see online.
Which, listen, I hate the way it's marketed.
Mommy glow up.
Just as if that you are deficient if you're not in a body that was like pre-childbearing, right? Like this whole idea for me of like, we should be skinny and have no hips and have no hair. And I'm like, so you want to date a child? Like there's a fine line between what are you marketing this image that women need to be. We have done the most incredible thing that the human body can do, in my opinion.
There's nothing.
What else could we do?
Nothing
as a species other than
give birth to a person,
grow a human.
Yes.
And feed that human with the same body. Like it's beyond.
Yeah.
So I feel so privileged to be able to do that. The last thing I want to do is then have this narrative for my daughter, but also for both of my kids to be like, well, now I got to go back to what I was before I had you because you ruined me.
Right.
But at the same time, I have the luxury of not having to be on the dating market. And like, you know what? Yeah, my left boob hangs lower than the right one because I nursed 2 babies. But that's not the, image I want to project when I'm trying to meet a new man. So I get the struggle. Like I empathize heavily.
Yeah.
And also the man who is divorced, maybe he's got a couple gray hairs. Maybe he's got like a dad bod.
But there's pressure on that too.
There is.
They
I'm
gotta
just
get back
saying.
to the gym, back in shape.
Right.
They're getting hair transplants, and all of a sudden they're conscious of how they look. And regardless,
but they did not have to change their physical body to grow another human. So the pressure's still on women.
Yeah,
is insurmountable.
And regardless of why it's there, the societal reasons, it's still there.
You don't want to talk about the patriarchy again?
No, regardless of why it's there, that pressure is still
it's
there.
Real.
And
it's
you
real.
can't doubt, you can't discount the fact that when a woman is, in her 40s or whatever, or older, and she's going through a divorce and she's out there and she's dating again, she wants to feel
confident and
feel
sexy
good
and good.
And so sometimes that does mean getting injections or managing the weight or what have you.
All of the above.
And you know what I think? I'm like, who are we to judge what is acceptable and what's not? If you want to do something that makes you feel and look good and feel your best, then do it.
I am judging, to be clear, the system.
Well, yes.
But this is still the system in which we have to play.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? So I am super duper pro. How do you get yourself to feeling back to good? Not back to pre-babies, but how do you want to show up? And how does your exterior match the way you feel inside? And sometimes that has to come first. And sometimes it can come from within. Again, whatever that looks like. And I'm so grateful that there are incredible women like Melissa who are willing to be like, yeah, I'm gonna get you back there. I'm gonna get you to whatever state you want to be. Maybe not back, maybe forward, maybe whatever.
To get you feeling your best.
Go get it.
Yeah.
Go get it. Like do whatever it takes to get back out there. But yes, I do like the idea of you broke it, you pay to fix it. Because if a glow up is what you want.
So like women who are still like, let's say married.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And they've had their kids and they've done the nursing.
Yep.
Should there be like a little like fund for just them sort of, reclaiming themselves?
Like, okay, we just had a kid. We're going to put this money into an RSP for and we're going to put this money into my account for
boobs
this.
and whatever else you want.
Yeah.
Hey, put that in the prenup.
But put it in, right? Let's have this candid conversation.
We talk about this all the time.
Why are we pretending?
No, if this is something that might be important to you, have that conversation early on.
Yeah. And let's be honest, for a lot of men, it's important that their wives look good too. It's not just the women being like, well, I would like to look and feel good. Yay for you. Also, the men, I'm
have some
sorry.
discussion,
You
like-
love when your girl looks hot.
And feels good about
and
themselves.
feels amazing and is confident. And,
Yes.
you know,
and then there's more intimacy.
Exactly.
And it's all relative.
it's all in the same loop. You're right. Because when you feel sexy, there's good times coming your way.
There you go.
Right?
There you go.
So you broke it, you buy it. Is that what you said?
Break it.
Break it, you fix it?
Something like that.
I can't remember. On today's episode.
Today we have Dr. Melissa Hershberg, who is so accomplished.
She's incredible. Talk
She's
about
like
a
the
boss.
weight loss queen. She has so many clinics that she is overseeing and responsible for, and she has her own private concierge service, and she's written a book, and she has her own podcast. And wow, we are just so lucky to have her in studio today. Welcome, Dr. Hershberg, to Dirty Laundry. We're so happy to have you here. And in person, we love an in-person guest.
Yeah.
Really, honestly, it's
so
the
good.
best.
So good.
Yeah. You're an author. You're a doctor. You own 2 clinics, and you're also a podcast host. Am I missing anything?
No, I think you've covered. And I'm a mom.
And you're a mom.
Yes.
What are you the most jazzed about in all of that bio we just
Oh my gosh. Well, it all kind of goes together, right?
Yeah.
So obviously my medical background, I've been practicing now for almost 20 years.
Wow.
So I have my health clinic, which has always had a focus on prevention and preventative health.
Yeah.
And as
Love
part
that.
of that, nutrition, fitness has always played a role. So that sort of led into my authoring the diet books
Yeah.
and the weight loss programs that I'm involved in. And then because I've been running those clinics, I then branched out, and I'm also working with Wellness House as well, a new clinic. So that's really fun because that brings the wellness side into medicine. So we obviously focus on, proper, evidence-based medical care, but then we also focus on longevity and what makes people feel good,
Right.
So we do some of the more complementary services like the IV vitamin drips
I
and
wanna
the
try
ice
that.
plunge
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the infrared sauna, and also aesthetics. So I
Yeah.
started doing medical aesthetics 15 years ago, and that's a really fun part of my practice as well. So I find as like a family doctor, you get really burnt out if you're just focusing on one specific thing. So what jazzes me and gets me excited is that I have all these different elements of medicine that I sort of get to tap into. And then the podcast is just a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's such a great resource of how to get information out there. We are so pushed like constant misinformation, disinformation. Everything is about marketing and sales and like the money behind the machine. It's rare, and I don't want to make too much of an assumption really, but it's not typically proactive on the medical side. Usually it's much more reactive. And also a sort of Band-Aid approach or like deal with the symptoms, right? Not the actual reason behind it all. So what made you take that approach to medicine?
Honestly, it happened by accident.
Okay.
So when I finished up my, two sort of things. So when I was doing my medical residency, we had to do a residency research project. And because I had a fitness background, I was a competitive gymnast when I was younger, and then I went into competing in fitness, I thought, one thing they don't teach you as doctors is how to give your patients advice on nutrition. All they had at that time was like a Canada Food Guide.
Right.
So I thought,
little triangle.
yeah, exactly,
Which is so
which has been updated since then. But back then it was, that's what we had. So I thought, okay, I'm going to create my own diet program and pit it against the Canada's Food Guide, put half the patients on mine, half the patients on Canada's Food Guide, and see which advice they did better with.
Yeah.
And sure enough, obviously, like a more structured weight loss program did better.
Right.
And that's sort of how I created my first book, which was called The Hershberg Diet. So that's why I knew that I wanted to incorporate some elements of nutrition and prevention into my practice. But then the accidental part was my husband at the time was working for a real estate developer. And this real estate developer got invited to a dinner party for this new preventative health clinic and concierge health clinic that was going to open up, but they didn't have a doctor yet.
Oh, come on.
And so they said, hey, isn't your wife a doctor? And
Yeah.
he's like, yeah. So then I went for the interview. And so I started working there. And that was the model of that clinic.
Oh,
So I
wow.
sort of kind of landed.
You like manifested
there.
your perfect dream job.
Yeah,
I love it.
sort of-
Well done.
Yeah. And then, because I had kind of freedom as well, it was a startup clinic. I had freedom to sort of tailor it to, what I envisioned was important.
Yeah.
We put in elements of preventative health. exercise, nutrition, stress management. And so that's how I sort of got my start. And then, throughout the years, I sort of dabbled in other areas of medicine.
Yeah.
I did some addiction medicine. I got trained in Botox and filler for aesthetic medicine. And then eventually I opened up my own practice that sort of combined them all.
So how does your diet differ than all the other ones that we see, in the media or what have you, or the Canada's Food Guide? How does it differ?
Okay. So the principles in the Hershberg diet are the same as the principles that I teach in my current diet called the Good Diet Plan. And they're the same principles that are incorporated in what I would consider a lot of good diets, Mediterranean diet, not these like fad diets. So there's three principles that focuses on. One is the concept of the fourth macronutrient. So do either of you
say
ladies,
more?
Okay.
No, I'm so intrigued.
Do either of you know what the three macronutrients are that make up food?
I want to say carbohydrate, fat, and protein.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are the three, exactly. Those are the three macronutrients that make up food. But what I decided to call the fourth macronutrient was water, but not about drinking water. It's about looking at water as an important component of food because people don't often realize that water will add volume and mass to food without adding calories. Right. And the healthiest foods for us are the ones that are highest in water content. Like if you think about spinach, we don't think about this being a high water food, but if you picture putting it in a pot and turning it on, it shrinks down to nothing because so much of its weight is water. Right? So you want to think about vegetables and fruits. And obviously not the dried ones, right?
But that's the fruit that I like.
Well, but that's just candy. It's like concentrated sugar, right?
Darn,
and I talk about that too. Like how a lot of people think like trail mix is so healthy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, if you need energy because you're working out and burning a ton of calories, sure, it's a quick way to get energy and take in a lot of calories and gain weight because everything is dry and concentrated. Right. So anyhow, it's about looking as water, number one, the fourth macronutrient. So fruits, vegetables, lean protein. So things like chicken, turkey are all high in water content, and lean dairy. So things like yogurt, cottage cheese, milk. Yeah. So that should form the bulk of the diet. Then you want to look at protein is the next thing. So obviously, and now today,
people are obsessed.
Protein is getting its moment to shine, right?
Yeah.
It's really everyone's doing high protein now.
Yeah. And I mean, I was speaking about this, and so the Hershberg diet was almost 20 years old now. So protein is the most thermogenic of all the macronutrients, meaning our body burns the most calories when we break down protein compared to carbs and fat. It also keeps us full for longer, and it helps maintain our muscle mass, which is going to burn more calories. So you want to make sure that you're having protein ideally at each meal and snack, and that you're getting enough protein in the diet. And then number 3 is obviously insulin resistance. We don't want to eat foods that are going to spike our insulin and spike our blood sugar because that will lead to weight gain.
Right.
So those are the 3 things. So essentially, you're eating berries, veggies, chicken, fish, lean cuts of red meat, legumes, lean dairy, and then portion controlled amounts of healthier carbs. Yeah. And then treats here and there, but that's more as a treat, not a daily regular thing.
I think so many people buy into the restrictive limited diets, right? And then how are those sustainable? I cut out dairy. I cut out gluten. I cut out this. I don't know how people sustain that or if that's even healthy.
Yeah. So I don't believe in restrictive diets because I think that right away it sets you up for psychological cravings. And if you feel like you can't have something, you want it.
It's like
right?
abstinence. It doesn't work.
Right.
As birth control.
It's, if you have a true addiction, it's like you have to look at what you're, for some people, if you look at alcohol, right?
Yeah.
Some people can have it in moderation. But if you're someone that knows that you can't, and the minute you have one drink, you're off to the race, then you should avoid it. And some people are like that with certain foods. I've seen some people that really are sugar addicts. For instance, they have a jelly, they can't just stop. Then it sets them off. So for those people, they should just avoid. There's certain foods like candy.
Yeah.
Avoid
is it even a food though? This is so
If
artificial.
I open a bag of Doritos, I'm finishing it.
But if you look at food as whole foods, not obviously the grocery store, but
processed.
Yeah. I just think if it doesn't grow or live on this planet, and yes, obviously these are, chemicals and dyes and stuff that we've theoretically gone from the planet. But, the focus always just being on whole foods, the sugary things are a treat. The alcohol, the donut, the birthday cake, like whatever those, that's a once in a while thing.
That should be a once in a while thing.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say when you mentioned calorie counting, so that's the one fad that I actually don't totally disagree with.
Okay.
Because the way my original book, instead of calling it the Hershberg diet, I was originally going to call it the money diet. Reason being that I always correlated, managing your weight the same way I manage my expenses. So you have to have a budget. Like imagine if you went to the store and nothing had a price tag.
Right.
And you only had $1,000 in your bank account and nothing had a price tag. Well, you might get home and realize you're in debt without realizing it because you took in too much without knowing the price. So if you don't know the price, in other words, the calorie content in the food and what your approximate budget is for your body not to gain weight, then it's really hard to know. Yeah. Now, I don't think you need to get obsessive about it.
Right.
But I do think that there is science there. And
but it's much like what you were just talking about, where if you can't handle that, then you don't choose that.
Then
sort of modality,
you have to know what's right for you, what's going to cause you, if that's going to make you obsessive or cause you,
it's a slippery slope where people start to get obsessive over their calorie counts and right? Like it can lead to
eating disorders. 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's not good for everybody, I guess, is what you're saying.
Right. Although now I feel like with all the GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro, that I think is taking the place of
calorie counting. I got an injection. Now I can eat whatever I want.
Well, because the reality is they can't. Like their body physically can only take in so many calories because they're feeling too full.
And doesn't it reduce even the interest in a lot of consumption?
Yeah, I don't know if it was on your socials or someone else's. Maybe it was yours, where it's not just reducing people's need to eat, but also other things.
Yeah, like
alcohol, shopping. Other types of addictive type of behavior.
Or numbing behaviors.
It's sort of reducing
that.
So let's talk about this.
Yeah. So these GLP-1 drugs, they work on our gastrointestinal system to slow down the rate that food travels through it. So basically you feel full for longer. So that's why it reduces people's appetite and they just physically can't eat as much. But it also works in the brain, in the mesolimbic system that's involved with reward and dopamine. And so other behaviors that people use to spike their dopamine, whether it's drinking or smoking or shopping or gambling, theoretically, and actually they've seen that naturally some people are just less interested in those behaviors. Now I can tell you from my patient population, it's not like everybody I have an Ozempic just suddenly quits vaping and they quit, but I have seen some decrease in those behaviors.
It really is seemingly this like magical pill, like that diet pill we were all kind of hoping for.
When is that coming out? It's kind of,
it has come out, but what are the side effects? Like what is the real downfall? Because my understanding, very rudimentary, so please debunk, is it's also something you have to be on then forever, potentially.
So it works, right? So it's not that you have to be on it forever, but I often compare it to like Botox, right? Yeah. So Botox works.
Right.
And if you wanted to keep working, you got to keep doing it. Now, if you decide to stop using Botox, nothing bad's going to happen, but your wrinkles will come back.
Right.
Okay. So with these drugs, often what happens because they work. So for many people who have tried to lose weight for years and they couldn't, but now all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just not as hungry or I'm not craving the food. That when they come off the drug, those things might come back and they might get hungrier and the cravings might come back. So they may start eating more and they may put on some weight. Now, that's okay, but they may have to stay on it long term. But I see this in medicine with like most medications that work, people are often on for long term. And we now are looking at obesity as a chronic disease in the same way we look at high cholesterol and high blood pressure. So most of the patients that I have that have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, I put them on medication. They're on it for life.
Right.
You know, it's not like, oh, your blood pressure's better. Let's go off the medication.
No, it's something you can manage.
You need. Yeah. You don't go, you don't wear your glasses and then we're like, well, I've had enough of these.
Yeah.
Still can't see, but heaven forbid I put them back on. Some things are meant to be.
So that now, and that's for people that have, obesity or that really have insulin resistance or that have certain emotional eating patterns.
Right.
There are some people that just use it initially as a kickstart to sort of help
if they
them.
have like a 20, like for the 20 pounds.
Yeah, for the 20 pounds. And they're like, okay, I remember what I need to do. And it helps them get started on a healthier lifestyle. Right. And then they can wean off it. And I've seen people do that. And then maybe they'll go and they'll be like, oh, shoot, I'm starting to notice bad habits creep up. I need to do another cycle of like a month or 2 months here and there. So a lot of people are using it like that too.
And what are the, people talk about, okay, there's downsides or side effects, but to me, the people who have these, who are obese, the side effects to that, correct me if I'm wrong.
Exactly.
Cancer, heart disease, all the liver problems, all the things. Doesn't that outweigh
that's just
the
it.
potential negative side effects of this drug?
Yeah. So you always have to do like a cost benefit analysis and weigh the risks with the benefits, right? So in terms of side effects, when you put people on these drugs appropriately, meaning through a physician that's monitoring them, you don't just throw somebody on like any dose. And if you watch to see they're developing side effects, titrate the dose accordingly. The most common side effects I would see are constipation, some abdominal pain, nausea, fatigue can happen at the beginning, but that's also in part due to the fact that they're losing weight. They're just not taking in as many calories. I would say those are probably the most common side effects.
Not that bad.
Compared to the benefits seem to be.
Exactly.
Some people find that if they are taking the medication and they try to eat like they used to, like and have a big portion or a really fatty meal, then they might have diarrhea or vomit. So you learn to, if you want to avoid those side effects, that you can't eat the same way that you used to. Yeah.
And who would you say, like if someone came into your practice and said, I want one of these drugs, who would you turn away from or who would you not prescribe it to?
So there's certain contraindications. So if you have a history of medullary thyroid cancer or somebody in your family has had that, if you have a history of pancreatitis or you've had, lots of gallstone attacks,
what happens if you have your gallbladder removed?
Then that's fine.
Asking for a friend.
No gallbladder. Then that's fine.
And
I tell you what,
I want to lose 10 pounds.
What if a psychological
what if
assessment?
you see it? You see someone come in.
So then it's the same as like any like plastic surgeon also that's looking at a patient. So if you're like someone's like really thin already and you think they've got body dysmorphia disorder, if they think they've got an eating disorder, these are people that you'd be like,
Right.
But, and on label, the drugs, especially like Wegovy now that's on label for weight loss, is on label if you have a body mass index above 27 with a weight-related health issue. But we can prescribe drugs off label. So just because you don't have that, I've seen some patients come in with a body mass index of 23 or 25, but yet they just don't feel good in their skin. They've gained 20 pounds in perimenopause. They don't feel like themselves. They're having joint pains. They're feeling heavy. Their periods are heavy. They just don't feel like themselves. I'm not going to turn that patient away.
Right.
I'll look at how maybe using a low dose, or as we hear on socials all the time, like microdose, may be beneficial for them. Yeah. It's like, I look at it also the same way as like an antidepressant. When a patient comes in and says to me, I'm feeling irritable, I'm just like not feeling pleasure in a lot of activities, I'm anxious. I don't sit there and say, well, how depressed are you before I decide if I'm going to give them an antidepressant. I look at whether a low dose of an antidepressant might help their wellness.
Right.
So this is when we talk about how we're focusing a lot now more, not just on medicine, but on wellness. Like these drugs may not be necessary to cure them of a disease, but they might help them feel better.
And it has to be so individualized, right? You can't compare, BMI is the example. Well, for you, that could be really high, but for this person, it could be really low, same numbers.
Exactly.
So people look and feel differently with different BMIs. They can't always brush it with the same brush.
Yeah. And then how often are you sort of checking in and monitoring and keeping tabs, I guess?
So with the program we run through my office and through Wellness House, it's a 6-week program initially. So we're checking in on them once a week for the first 6 weeks. After that, usually once a month. And then after that, it can be once every 3 months and then eventually once a year. So it's very individualized.
Yeah.
And do they pay out of pocket in Canada? It's different in Europe. Is it true that it's like a lot less expensive in Europe to get these drugs than in North America? No?
Compared to the US, yes. But the prices in Europe and Canada are pretty similar. So again, it just depends on if you meet criteria and what insurance, like what drug coverage plan you have. Right. So if you're diabetic and you have drug coverage, these medications are covered. If you are obese, like I talked about, with a BMI above 27 and a health-related or a weight-related medical issue like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, gout, then it would be covered and on label if you have insurance for it. Otherwise, yes, you're paying out of pocket for the drug, and you're paying out of pocket for the if you're part of like a program where you have a counselor that checks in on you once a week.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we see in the work that we do a lot of this, like, okay, I've left my partner, I'm on my own, I want to like venture out into the dating world, you know, something's got to shift with me. Are you seeing a lot of that coming, you know, to you with like, I need to lose weight, I want to get back out there, I want to find, you know, whatever joy in my life again, sort of during those transition periods? Is that fairly common?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that, you know, it's meant to, but I find if we're thinking about women, you know, women have some, I guess they have a little bit of money they put aside to spend on, you know, beauty, right? And so whether that money is going to go to getting a gel manicure, whether that money is going to go to getting hair extensions, or whether that money is going to go to getting facials, or whether that money is going to go to getting Botox, or whether that money is going to go towards being on Ozempic, it's up to the person to figure out what makes them feel best.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's so important, especially for people who are going through like the divorce, those types of transitions. That's a time in their life where they get to sort of redefine who they are. And not just inside, but also outside, right? You see them trying to, maybe it's exercise, maybe it's doing something for yourself so that you feel good on the outside and on the inside. And it's important.
Well,
right?
and you said often it's kickstarting a new lifestyle.
A new identity, really.
Yeah,
it's like, and now I'm a me. I was a we, now I'm a me, and I got to stand on my own 2 feet and put myself out there again. Maybe you're dating again, or going out into the workforce that you haven't been in a while. You've got to sort of put yourself
you want to feel confident
together and feel confident.
And
it's about getting that confidence
workforce
back
again after being at home with kids. Maybe it's been 10 years, maybe it's been 20. Like, that's a daunting task. And so, you're going to go buy that great new power suit, and you're also going to, you know, make yourself physically feel good and confident.
Yeah. And I find that, like, I don't know if I can generalize this to all women, but oftentimes, like, when you're going through a divorce, all of a sudden you end up with more time if you don't have the kids 100% of the time. And all of a sudden it's like, there's time that now I can get back to the gym, or I don't have to cook for my husband anymore. Now I can make the healthier meals that I want to eat.
Right?
Often the stress of breaking up and going through divorce, I find that a lot of women tend to lose weight during that transition. Now it works the other way too. Some women can turn to food when they're feeling stressed, but
Are you ever hesitant when somebody comes and they're in this period of transition to be like, you know what, you don't actually need these things. Maybe you need an alternative course of something,
or something like therapy in addition to all the things. It's not gonna be a quick fix. Maybe part of the whole package that someone might need, right?
So we have our program is like the Good Diet Plan. So as part of it, we don't just go through, here's your medication, bye-bye.
Right.
So we have medication options and non-medication options. So before Ozempic came around, I helped people lose weight successfully for years without medication, just by focusing on healthy diet principles, accountability. So that makes a huge difference. Like having someone just to check in with week to week that like keeps an eye on you and how you're doing. I have therapists that I often recommend to people if they need help with like emotional eating or figuring out what triggers them. And so all those things are there, but you do have someone that come in that say, okay, I'm 40 years old. I know all the things. Okay. I know what's healthy. I know what I'm supposed to eat. I know that I'm supposed to go to the gym. I've talked to therapy at length. Okay. But I can't okay. You know, so I find that this has been a bit of why it's been such a blockbuster hit medication, and you're seeing it throughout all Hollywood. You know, these people have access to the best therapists, to the best personal trainers, to the best chefs, to the best everything. And all of a sudden now
it's also time. Because you need time to do all those things, right? So if you are working and you're a single parent and you don't have the time to go to the gym every single day, even though that's what your body maybe needs it to look and feel your best. So it's like, this is like an easy addition.
You know, it is, but I often find that for most people that have started this medication, they're also working out. They're also making good choices. But what it's done is it's just helped them get control of that overeating the portions, the snacking, the food noise, the like, what am I going to have next?
Boredom, right? Yeah. You're eating because you're not even hungry. You've
got that food. What do I want? What am I in the mood for this? You know,
there's a lull in your day or something.
That 3 p.m. pickup. You need a little something, and So you yourself went through a divorce. Can you see a lot of yourself in these patients? Did you two struggle during this transition? What did you sort of lean on? What were your kind of go-tos to support your own divorce journey?
So which one? No, first. Okay.
Start from the top.
So my divorce, my only actual divorce was, I'm trying to think how old, I think I was 31. So we had only been married for like 5 or 6 years. I got married pretty young and we struggled with infertility. So we didn't have any children when we split up. And it was stressful. Like I was going through a stressful period, more so because of dealing with the infertility and thinking that all my friends were having babies. Yeah. And I was at this all of a sudden this very different stage than my friends. And so I was building my career, but I was trying so hard to have, a baby. I think I did 7 rounds of IVF. Like it was intensive. Goodness. And then finally it was just like, I'm done. I'm done with this all. And I don't know if it was just couldn't handle the stress of that anymore. So for me, when I did leave my marriage, I was very thin because the way that my body handles stress is different. Some women turn to food, some people eat, and my body's different. So when I'm very stressed out, physically I can't eat. Like I almost feel a pit in my stomach and I can't. And I just get hypermetabolic. So I was quite thin, not like dangerously thin or anything, but I was thin at that time.
I'm the same way. Like you could see it on my face. You can just see it when I'm stressed. It's just the way my body reacts too. Yeah.
So, and it was different too, because I was like different than a lot of the women I see that, I didn't have children. I was young. I was still in the workforce. Yeah. So it felt like, it was obviously a traumatic thing to go through because it was sort of like saying goodbye to that partner of mine and also saying goodbye to the idea of having children, or so I thought at the time. So that's sort of, I don't know, where I was at that time. So I just really focused on work, having fun. I made new, younger, single friends. So it was actually like, as much as it was like a very difficult time in my life and stressful, it was also really like fun and exciting time in my life.
Be more carefree and have a second chance at just.
Yeah. And it was just sort of like, you go from this, like your life is written in this path to all of a sudden, like, I have no idea. I don't know if I'm going to have kids. I don't know if I'm going to get married again. I don't know. Like it was just,
That is a very scary thing when you're leaving one relationship, one life that you had maybe imagined or had gotten used to. And it's like, okay, I'm taking on a whole new path and it has not yet been predetermined or even thought of.
Yeah.
Often the divorce can catch you kind of unaware and it's like, oh, crap, now what?
Yeah.
Pivot, our favorite COVID word. How do we pivot into a new life? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're quite young though, 31. I mean, now 31-year-olds, I was also 31. And I feel like now 31-year-olds are not even on their first marriage.
Yeah.
Right?
So it was like, I got married at 26.
Yeah.
And we were engaged at 24. It was just, like.
Very young.
And it's funny because I had struggled with all the infertility at that age. And that's so young. Yeah. Like, and then obviously fast forward to now that I have had 2 children, at a later age.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just funny how life evolves.
I also think that the fertility issue, I know like from, my clients that it takes such a big toll. A lot of people.
So hard.
It really, and to go through that many rounds, like it takes such a big toll
in a
relationship.
And you forget a little bit, like now that it's been several years since, like you forget. But I will tell you, every single month, you feel like a failure when you get your period. So it's like repeating failure after failure. And not only just failing yourself, but also then having to tell your partner. Yes. So it was just like years of feeling like, I used to have been very type A in my life and used to being very successful at whatever I studied, I researched, I learned I could do it. And like, why do I keep failing and letting everybody down? When I would see my parents and I hadn't seen them in years and I'd be like, is she having a drink? Oh, she's having a drink. Not
it was just this horrible. She's having a drink. She's not.
Yeah, it was just this horrible. And I think part of me leaving the marriage was also just leaving that. I don't want to feel like a failure and letting people down anymore. Like I want to move on to something that I'm going to be successful at.
Yeah.
Right.
Something you can control.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a physical burden and an emotional one, right? Because you're doing shots every day and hormone injections or, whatever.
And put on the woman. Like often, sometimes it's the man, as you know, that like has issues too. Yeah. And it's always on the woman. Why can't she get pregnant? Well, why can't he get her pregnant?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right?
And it's funny, like in our case, they said it was unexplained infertility. Yeah. They couldn't say what was the cause. And subsequently, like he ended up having 3 kids. I ended up having 2 of my own kids. So
a compatibility of like.
I don't know. Was it a compatibility? Was it some higher power being like, this isn't the right time in your life for this?
I always think that too. I'm like, maybe it wasn't meant to be, right? Like it just wasn't.
Because for both of you to go on and have children of your own is very
so wild.
And for you as a doctor to be like, well, this is so strange. The rest of us folk are just like, we don't know what's going on with our bodies.
I have theories, though. I have theories. Yeah. So one of my theories is that I was just born with a lot of eggs. Okay. And had polycystic ovarian, not the typical polycystic ovarian syndrome that's more associated with women who might have like, certain traits like heavier acne or some hair loss. But I just think I had a lot of eggs. And so each month, I think the hormonal milieu, they would like compete. And then I had too many eggs. I remember when they did egg retrieval the first time, like I got like 29 and they're like, oh my God, 29, but none of them were good. And I think I needed to get older for some of those eggs to get rid of them to then in later. For later. So that's my one theory.
It's like a traffic jam.
I think it was a traffic jam.
You need rush hour to end so you can slow the traffic down. I love it.
Wow.
I think that's one of my, so I think for me, I became fertile later in life.
Interesting.
And then my other theory is that it's called bronze ovary theory, is that I used to eat a lot of vegetables. I was actually like, I used to focus on like very sort of like a lower fat diet that had like lots of lettuce and salads and and all this stuff. And I think it was just too much maybe beta carotene because like lettuce, so that maybe that wasn't as healthy. Because then I did switch like after my divorce in my 30s, I noticed my diet changed a bit. So I was eating less, like just a bit more balanced, like more fats, more protein, not necessarily so many salads and vegetables. So maybe that was something.
I would think that diet has a huge impact on fertility, right? If people who are restricting, like we talked about before, I'm sure that.
And this is the danger, I think, of fad diets where we're just sort of brushing everyone with this broad stroke. And it's like, no, this is working for like the one person who sort of founded it, but it's not really meant to be a kind of a one size fits all situation.
Yeah. It's interesting. There definitely is something, with diet and fertility, because even with patients on these drugs, these GLP-1 drugs, they're seeing a lot of like pregnancies.
Oh, wow. Oh, interesting. So they're becoming more fertile.
Well, some are becoming more, some are less.
Because they're losing the weight or they're...
Yeah. So for some women, if they're holding on to more weight, that can also disrupt their hormones.
Right.
And so when they lose the weight, they can become all of a sudden more fertile. And then for some women also, it just makes the birth control less effective.
So the Ozempic babies are coming.
Babies. But it's interesting, right? Because I remember when I was going through my infertility treatment, I was probably about 5 pounds heavier than I am now. Like I was always a little bit heavier during that period. Even though I was eating more vegetables and salads and whatnot. I don't know if it was just the hormones at that point in my life or if it was from being on hormones for infertility therapy for 2 years or 3 years.
Put some more weight.
So I don't know if it's a weight thing, but it might have been a nutrition.
Interesting. And so that was you at 31. And then where did your life take you?
Okay. So then after 31, I then started dating and that's around the time I started my own business as well. I started my own medical clinic.
Big changes.
Yeah. So I took on that and I started dating and I dated a older man who had already had children because I thought if I couldn't have my own children, then I didn't want the pressure of having to give a man his first child. I didn't want that pressure.
Been through that.
Done that. So I'm like, he's had kids. Great. And I can be a stepmom and he was fun. And so, but then after we were together for a while, I said, I still have this like yearning. Like I know I want my own child. And I'd actually gone through an adoption course, I was looking at adopting a child as well around that time. And then he and I broke up because he wasn't sure that he wanted another child because he was older than me. But then ultimately we got back together when he was like, okay, fine. But I don't think he actually thought I would get pregnant. And then boom, I get pregnant naturally, immediately.
Wow.
I feel like it's always the way, right?
Like
the second you
the
stop
universe
trying.
is like, it's just like laughing at it. It's like, you're
laughing at
you. Like,
like, what is going on, right? So next thing you know, I'm like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And he's like, oh my God. Anyhow, so, and then that pregnancy just felt like a complete like miracle after everything I'd been through with the infertility doctor telling me that I'd probably never have my own children, that I'd probably need an egg donor. And then all of a sudden I'm pregnant with no intervention whatsoever.
Wow.
Wild.
And then I had my daughter. And at the time, my partner, her dad, was running a big company. He was traveling between here and another city. And he was just at a different stage in his life. I don't think he actually was wanting at that period of his life to have a young baby.
Yeah.
I think we were kind of on different paths. And I won't get into the nitty-gritty details, but we ended up splitting. And so I was single with a 4-month-old baby, living in, like, I moved out the house. I was living in a condo month to month, like trying to figure out while I ran my practice, being like, oh my God, so I have my 4-month-old miracle baby. I have no parents in town, no family in town. I have my own full-time medical practice where I'm not on mat leave.
You're not on mat leave?
No, I took no, you know.
Yeah.
Right, because it's your
Running your own
practice.
business.
My practice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm breastfeeding. So I'm like, and I'm dealing now with a divorce proceeding, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a period in my life. I would say that was the most traumatic, stressful period of my life. And that was a period where, if you look back at me, like I could not physically, like, it's the first time I understood what it feels like to not physically be able to, like, eat food. Like, I was,
you had no appetite.
First of all, it tasted like sawdust. When I put food in my mouth, it tasted like just not like sawdust, like grit, like I couldn't swallow. Like, I think it was just the amount of stress hormones that you have in your body at that time. So, but I was breastfeeding. Like, what am I going to do? And I can't become this emaciated person. So I was drinking Boost, like, during the day. Yeah. Like, I was just drinking, and I was taking tablespoons of oil because I was trying to just get down as many calories as I could without having to actually
produce milk. Because if
right.
Wow.
Without actually having to eat food. Okay, my body was just in, like, I was just traumatized again, because I was just like this big failure again of, like, oh my God, you know?
Right.
And then slowly but surely, you know, I had a nanny, so that was really helpful. You know, I had a career, so I obviously had, like, means, and, you know, I could move on. I was able to, like, get a house, and then you just slowly start getting your life back and, you know, dating and
I think that's it's a great reminder. It's just, like, one small step at a time. And, like, you can't look at the big picture when you're so in the weeds, that you just do what you can that day. Yeah. Like that hour, that minute.
Yeah.
You just do that, and you just one step in front of the other. And then eventually you look back and look at everything you've accomplished and done. And hard to imagine that, you know, the person you were at that moment is now the person you are today. You know, we often get the stories at the end when people have come out of the fog, and here they are, and they're ready to tell their tale and their journey, which is still incredibly helpful and so wonderful to hear other people's stories. But yeah, like, at one point it was really, really hard and really, really bad.
And that's why we love sharing those stories, because so often it's sensationalized. We've talked about this, the end, right? The end result. Well, I'm successful. I've got my own companies and all these things. But, like, we want to show the journey to get there.
Yeah, it's not so easy. Like, people are like, oh, look at this person. She's got this nice, like, life and this husband and these kids and this career. And it's like, but it's everybody, when you get into the details with everybody's been through it. Everybody's been through, you know, and I think when you're younger, you think and you expect that everything just goes well. Yeah. And it's not until you get older that you realize, nope, things are supposed to happen. That's real life. So you have to train yourself to know how to, like, handle it and be resilient and pivot and pivot.
Always pivot.
And now you're married.
Yes.
And,
so now
2 kids. And
I met my current partner. Actually, Adam, who's my current partner, he and I dated for the first time, like, right after university, because we both went to McGill. And then, you know, went our separate ways, kind of broke up. But we'd see each other around. And then we started dating when he had gone through a split as well. So his daughter was around 2, and my daughter at the time was around 11 months-ish. So really young when we started dating. We both had 2 young daughters. And then, we were both, like, not, what's the word? I don't want to say, like, bruised, like, recover. Like, we had been through it. We had been a little bit, you know,
Battered,
damaged, beaten down. I don't know what you want to call it. And then, so we dated for a few years, got engaged, and then lo and behold, again, went out for some fun Halloween night party, and oopsie, and pregnant again.
Yeah.
So no trying, no nothing, and then that's when I have my son now, and so he's now going to be 9 next month, July. Yeah. So time
and your daughter's
flies.
how old?
And my daughter is 12. She just had her bat mitzvah on the weekend.
Oh, right. I saw it on the weekend. Right.
Yes.
I forgot.
Yeah.
Yes. So you're just still recovering from that. Like, I don't know how you're here.
Yeah.
You're just had a bat mitzvah, like mazel tov.
And you know what? It was so nice too, because at her bat mitzvah, my ex-sister-in-law, so for my first husband, his sister and I are still good friends. And so she was there. And then my ex, so my daughter's father, was there with his daughters. It was just very nice to have, all these people that have
been a part of
your life.
That's so beautiful
story.
that you can have this beautiful simcha together and have all of these people come and to support your daughter. Isn't that
so beautiful?
That's so nice.
And to still be in the lives of those children that you were at the time. That's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. That's goals for sure.
Yeah, it was a really special
leaving
event.
relationships and still maintaining some level of love, being like, hey, we once shared this really important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And let's focus in on the good and leave all the ugly behind. And let's just stay connected because of that, beautiful moment we were able to share together.
This has been so amazing.
So
Thank
wonderful.
you for sharing
great insights.
your story, both personally and professionally. And it's really been interesting.
Thank you.
Thank
so much
you.
fun. It was so much fun talking to you guys.
Thank you. Amazing. This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver, produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.